We like to believe that ignoring big emotions, pushing them to the side, not dealing with them is effective. We've actually become a world that thinks that that's the point, that you're supposed to just push them away and not deal with them. In this episode, you're going to learn and understand how detrimental and even life-injuring that is.
We're now getting more and more obsessed about our vital signs, the heart rate, where our breath is. Emotions are a vital sign. And if you're not experiencing them, there's something seriously wrong on the other end of that. And there's implications to not feeling them.
Hey, everybody, it's Bianca.
Welcome back, Evolvers. It's Amelia. We are so excited for this hot tempo episode because of the fact that we have all been there when we have tried to connect with someone, team member, friend, family member, and you've tried to do something, maybe collaborate with them, maybe do a little project, do something, and then all of a sudden it doesn't go your way or something hurts. And then we have this choice to kind of go feel those emotions of feeling hurt or frustrated or whatever it is, or go emotionally numb. And nowadays it is more easier than it's ever been to get emotionally numb. And so today's episode is all about the tools you need to stop emotionally numbing. And Bianca, tell me about your story about this client, because right before we got recording this, you said, I have a client story for this. And I want to make sure that we echo some of the stories, like I've said in previous episodes, for giving hope to people. So by the end of this episode, you're going to scroll away with at least one tool that you need to start practicing, and you can start practicing today to stop emotionally numbing and actually feel those feelings.
So there's this client that I've been working with for almost 4 years now. It's been a trip. This client has followed me to a couple of different locations that I was working at. And then eventually she's going to be here with us at Evolve once we get squared away a little bit, which is super exciting.
That's so exciting.
And I've been working with her for a while. When we first met, she was in the most dire of dire circumstances. She had just attempted suicide. She was about to be hospitalized for a severe eating disorder. She was at the absolute worst place in her life. Decades and decades of trauma finally caught up to her. And that in and of itself speaks volumes to the amount of emotional numbing that was happening there. And what ended up happening as a byproduct, her trying to end her life, believing that it would be better off if she wasn't here. But that's not the story. The story is she and I have been working together since the darkest point of her life and getting out of that. And now here we are, and she's the best she's ever been. She's thriving at her job. She's bidding for a promotion. She's looking to get a new place. She's starting to become involved in all things Evolve. And she was at movie club the other day. It's amazing. And her life is getting so much better. And we had a session yesterday morning at the time that we're recording this. And she's like, I feel great. And I'm noticing all of these things and I can't wait for my life. And me and this person are planning on doing this. And I was like, hey, can I ask you a question? She's like, no. I'm like, no, really. Can I ask you a question?
That's great.
She goes, I'm scared, but yeah. I said,
Nice.
You and this person were supposed to have this big conversation. Did that ever happen? And she goes, nope. I said, interesting. But everything's fine and dandy, right? We ended up going into this dialogue about how she's been numbing and running away from the realities of this big conversation that she needs to have with someone very important in her life by focusing on how great all of these other areas of her life are. And someone might look at that and say, well, Why do you want her to feel bad? Hasn't she had it hard enough? Hasn't she had enough hardship, enough difficulty, enough pain in her life? Why should she have to do this? Because of what's not happening. She's looking at all of the good and she's focusing on all of the good, but she's using that as a tool to avoid and numb out and run away from the other things that still need to be worked on and processed. This is something that so many of us do, and it's why I wanted to use this story as the primer for this episode. Emotional numbing is twofold. It's using like substances and food and alcohol and sex and whatever, all of these things to run away from heavy emotions, but it's also hyper focusing on the positive and the good and only trying to pay attention to certain things and only in like adding good, quote unquote, happy, positive, nice, fun things into your life. It's not just destructive. It's the things that we're convincing ourselves are good. So like if you're struggling with a relationship with your family and then you start hyper exercising, you're like, but I'm getting fit. Yeah, but why are you doing it? It's a mechanism to emotionally numb. Amelia, why should people care? Because you and I know the detriments of it, and you and I know what happens long term to our body and to our brain and to our relationships and to everything that we care about. But how do we help our listeners, everyone listening to this and watching this right now, understand why that is so detrimental for them?
I was actually on a coaching call with a client, shout out to you if you're listening, yesterday. And we were talking about this, and she's in her early 20s. And she and I were actually exploring centenarians and longevity and supercentenarians, essentially how long she wants to live. And I said, no one's ever going to ask you this question ever again in your life. I'll put money on it. But how long do you plan on living until? And she's like, what? Like she's never been asked that question, understandably. And I said, well, your cells need to be programmed to some degree with an intention. Otherwise, they're kind of just like wandering around, getting sent signals from your emotional responses, and they're not really lifting up your potential as much as they could. And you're someone that cares deeply about your potential. She's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, at the end of the day, if you're not feeling those feelings and you're not interpreting them as signals for what you value, at the end of the day, you're actually shortening the telomeres, which are the structures that help to make up your DNA cells. So why should people care? If you're not feeling your feelings, what that does is it increases ultimately cortisol levels, hormones that are quote unquote that not really helpful when they stick with your nervous system. After a long time, that can lead to tension. Over lots of time, that can lead to actual chronic pain. Over even more time, that can lead to decreased decision-making, decreased mobility, decrease in quality of life, which ultimately decreases longevity, how long you can live on this planet, which again, most people don't care about that. And she and I talked about that. But what most people do care about, Bianca, is I want to make sure that I can see my grandchildren. I want to make sure that I can be there with my grandkids when they do their first step. I want to make sure that I can be there for when they graduate high school, when they're there for college, right? People care about the big moments, being there with people that they love and care about. And now I want everyone to imagine being at a moment that's been extremely meaningful for you and shifted the tides of how you've seen this world with people that you love and care about. Could have been a family gathering. It could have been a game night. It could have been graduation ceremony. Now I want you to infiltrate that with a ton of pain that's distracting your thoughts. I want you to decrease your mobility. So instead of maybe going up those flight of stairs, you have to figure out another way. Or I want you to actually sit in bed, because some people that actually do have chronic emotional numbing actually end up into depression, into way more implications on their health than they realize. as a result of not processing their emotions and instead emotionally numbing.
Parkinson's
that.
disease, MS, cancer, tumors, these have all been linked to unprocessed trauma, to unprocessed emotions. You are literally guaranteeing that you end up with severe health issues, life-threatening issues that are going to take you away from your life if you continue to numb.
And that's the brutal aspect, because we really don't, we're not good at kind of zooming out and realizing the implications of the choices that we make now. We talked about a little about that on Movie Club in the context of like environmentalism and consumerism, which I'm really grateful for. Shout out to you all who joined us. And if we could really see the future version of us, the version of us that doesn't feel our feelings, that just emotionally numbs, we end up like these shriveled, gross versions of ourselves that are like hollowed out. I mean, just being honest, the people who do actually instead turn towards feeling their feelings, again, like I said, it's a vital sign, are more of the vibrant, the mobile, the healthy type of people that when you see, their energy has an orb about them. They have an exuberance for life. They have, more often than not, a really balanced perspective. Maybe not just always positive, go lucky, but they're able to go into the light and into the shadow parts of themselves very eloquently. And so, Bianca, my ask to you, for everyone that's joining us in this episode, and as we kind of round this out. So, okay, cool. I'm starting to understand that actually, like, feeling your emotions is actually really important. I also know it's a skill. So where do people start? How do they start per the tools? What's one or two tools that you gave that client that she's used and had positive results with, not necessarily feeling good, right, about, but positive results to be able to ultimately not run away from her feelings or emotionally numb out anymore. And thus that has increased her fulfillment over the time of her life and thereby her health. What's one that you would recommend, bar none, that anyone listening to this episode today can practice and use for a better emotional health?
When people hear the idea of feel your feelings, I actually had another client who was like, I cannot do this. You're asking me to feel terrible all day. And I was so glad he said that, because I was like, oh, that's a big misconception. Okay, cool. You are not meant to sit there and feel your feelings all day. That is not productive. That is not helpful. That is not going to help you achieve the long-term goals that you want. What is productive is setting aside 5 minutes a day just to start to emotionally check in. Start with the body first. A lot of people, it's easier to start with the body. What am I noticing? What sensations are coming up? Am I feeling tight? Is it heavy? Am I feeling free and loose? What am I feeling? What is my physiological sensations?
Your audio is clipping a little bit, so I'm going to recap a little bit on that because you can definitely make out what you said, but it was clipping just a little bit at the end, and that's okay. That's okay. We have a great production team. Shout out to NLPS, who does their dang thing to make sure that our listeners get what we need. And in an essence, the tool is starting small. And Bianca, I'm 100% endorsing what you said. There's a book by Mark Brackett. It's Brackett, definitely, PhD. And his book is Permission to Feel. And I'm reading that in an effort to try to pick up on some language that would be helpful for more of my male clients so that they can feel. And ultimately, the beginning of the book really gives what we just gave here, which is giving that permission slip to each and every single one of us to be able to feel those feelings. And like you said, Bianca, set aside some time throughout the day to do so and just start small. And I find that when we have a simple tool like that, and you can have an accompanying journal, or you can have a timer, you can even download the PDF that we're going to include in the show notes to help you do so that you have some of that structure to contain what it is that's coming up for you. But start small. And that's ultimately the tool that we're going to give. And when you want deeper, more, reach out to us. We have so many more tools that can be customized to your emotional experience and how you feel. Because again, whether it's coming up in the body or whether it's really heavy in the head, we know that your process of feeling is valuable and important and unique to you. So with that being said, my episode suggestion is 453, what it really feels like with high quality therapy. Bianca, your episode suggestion in closing.
457, polyvagal theory, the key to well-being. Start small, work your way up. That is what this client did that helped her get to the place, from the place where she was to where she is now. We just started small and then we climbed the ladder. All right, everybody. Take this to heart. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you next time.
Keep evolving.
Bye, everybody.
Everyone. Bye.